Today, our topic will be talking agro-financing, bridging the gap, its challenges and solutions. The agricultural sector is the backbone of many economies, like we all know, and basically providing food, raw materials, and more especially, employment opportunities. However, financing remains a significant challenge and a problem for farmers and agribusinesses across board, often limiting their growth and productivity. Now, agro-financing, which includes loans, credits, and investments, plays a crucial even, role in empowering farmers to invest in modern equipment, expand their operations, and improve crop yields. Now, in this interview, we'll be talking to a special guest on the show where we'll be exploring the intricacies of agro-financing, its impact on the agricultural sector, and its potential solutions to challenges faced by farmers in accessing financial resources. So I'll be introducing my guest right now. He is the Executive Director, Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management, and the CEO, Trema Agro Limited. Emmanuel Abushson, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So we'll jump right to it. Please, can you explain to us what agro-financing entails and why is it essential for the agricultural sector?
Right. So agri-financing is basically investment funding meant targeted towards agriculture around all the value chain from production, processing down to distribution. So it's basically funds that are specifically targeted to finance agriculture, either by equity, debt, or even grants to enhance agricultural production.
It's a bit quick.
Yeah.
Let's shed some more light what it actually means, and if for the novice, how they can have full understanding of that.
Okay, so like I said, basically, agro-financing is funds that are targeted towards agriculture. It might be innovative agro-financing. It could be equity without use of ambiguous words. Equity is having a share in a particular business, which basically what every other business is, the funds for every other businesses. So we can have either the equity, debt, or a blend of both financing targeted towards agriculture, especially just to invest in agriculture, to make sure there are fundings for agriculture through all the value chain. Then we talk about production, we talk about processing, we also talk about distribution. So these funds can come in terms of loan, can also come in terms of grant, but interventions, both financial interventions, government interventions, or finance is provided by financial institutions like commercial banks. We have the microfinance bank, or even individuals, angel investors, or investors, equity or venture capital that are targeted in terms of improving and enhancing productivity in agriculture.
Awesome, thank you, Emmanuel. But recent statistics have shown that only 7% of rural communities in Nigeria receive agricultural loans from banks, and we're talking a very robust reports that was put together by the Bureau of Statistics, Federal Ministry of Budget and Planning, and the World Bank. So this is serious. How is it that with all you have said, there's this minute percentage that can only benefit from it?
Okay, first of all, we have to look at the access to financial services, which is financial inclusion, which I think for the past 2-3 years, this has been the major effort of the government to ensure that we have financial inclusion for rural areas. So rural settlements, their exclusion financially from financial services is a very big challenge for them to be able to harness or participate in most of these interventions. That is one. Then we also talked about their data, the availability of data, financial records. Most of these farmers don't have financial records. And when we talk about commercial lending, financial lending to smallholder farmers, it's a former. These are former business sector trying to provide services to the informal sector. So most of these farmers who are in the rural settlement have don't have financial data. It's an informal sector that makes it very hard for commercial banks or financial institutions to provide financial services to them. So we talked about their exclusion. They are excluded from financial services. We also talked about lack of effective bookkeeping for some of these rural farmers. Then again, it's an informal sector, so it's very hard for you to harmonize them together. Then again, we talk about collateral. So many of these farmers don't have collateral. Now, collateral in terms of land, sometimes the farmers tell you that this land is their land. They own it either by inheritance or it was acquired, but there are no documentation that certify that this land belongs to them. Even people in the rural area, sometimes they are still battling with certificate of occupancy, the CFO, that certify that this land, they have the right to occupy this land, that by purchase or by transfer. So, in all of this, subject the farmer to the place of mercy, and these commercial banks are trading not with their capital per se, they are trading with investors' capital, depositors' capital. So depositors come to deposit their funds either in a fixed account, and they use this funds to provide loans, and again all other funds that is available to this bank. So there had to be a proper, effective way they transact with these farmers, and because there are no collaterals, no security that guarantees this investment or this business, it's very hard for commercial banks to trade with them. Then again, we also look at the long-term goal, the long-term business framework around agriculture, especially in terms of production. So it's a business that seems to be quite hard for investors to invest in. That's why then we also need to take a very critical look into the risk factor that associates with most of these farmers. We categorize these farmers into four categories. They are able and unwilling. We have the unable and willing. We have the willing and able, and the unwilling and unable. So these farmers sometimes are unable to pay back the loans even when they are willing, due to the structural framework of how their operations, how they operate. We talk about giving loans to farmers who are going to still use manpower to farm. So at the end of the day, it still boils down to subsistence farming. And when it's subsistence farming, it is only the leftover that can be sold at the market. Then also access to market. Sometimes these farmers are at the mercies of the buyers, because what they're producing cannot compete in the market space. So they are subject to the mercy of the buyer. So it's hard for commercial banks to effectively trade with these farmers in terms of giving them loans. Then let's see. Then again, that's the financial exclusion. If you come to when you go to Kogisi, for example, a number of local governments don't have a single commercial bank. So for them to use a commercial bank, they had to travel to another local government 500 kilometers, sometimes 300 kilometers, to have access to a commercial bank. So these are challenges that we have to identify and then see how we can provide solutions to some of these challenges. Then again, when we now talk about digital banking that is already taking the mother space in the banking sector, most of these rural settlements don't have access to internet, access to network. So we also need to talk about digital exclusion. They are financially excluded. They're also digitally excluded, technologically excluded. The kind of services that gets to these farmers make it very hard for commercial banks to provide them loan and also monitor loans that is given to them.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I would want to circle back to what you just mentioned, because we're talking bridging the gap. Because we care enough. Let's say there's that farmer that's watching right now. You talked about no records, no data, no collateral, no internet, they're digitally excluded, right? So, but we want them to thrive. We want them to do well. Is there, or are there ideas that you as a professional can proffer can suggest that would help bridge that gap, because they must do business. We're talking about productivity, and it is known that they're productive. They have products that they're growing. But there are certain things that just fall by the wayside for them. What do you suggest that can help mitigate them still having access to these loans and making the bountiful products that they do?
Okay. First of all, I will say that the area of cluster farming is a very good way to address some of these challenges, because we are talking about micro. There are more micro at the micro level economy, the micro economy, and it's more subsistent because of the way they farm. But when we cluster them together, it is easier for them to be able to harness some services that are obtainable. Let's say, for example, when we talk about agent banking. So agent banking, the services of the POS that's currently at an increase in Nigeria, it's trying to bridge this gap. However, because this sector, again, like I said, is informal, clustering will make it formal. These are some of the services we are currently trying to provide to some of these farmers in terms of clustering them together, then registering them with the corporate affairs commission, also their state commerce chamber of commerce, for them to become cooperatives and have access to banking services. Then help them. Then we have a cooperative management system that help us manage these cooperatives in terms of gathering of data and all of that. However, what we're doing, we're talking about a population of 200 million Nigerians, which over 60% of these populations are into farming. And this 60%, a very good number of this percentage are rural farmers who are disenfranchised in terms of access to some of these services that I just mentioned, the financial institutions and also digital. So we have to look at clustering. First, cluster them so that these small farmers become a bigger farm. So when we cluster them, it's easier now for them to be able to pay for some services. Then it reduces risks. It's easier to fund cooperatives. Some commercial banks are currently doing that, funding cooperatives. Again, monitoring the activities. So it's easier to fund these cooperatives in terms of production, processing, and also in distribution than to fund individual farmers. Then we also need to look at the landmarks. What is the total coverage of land these farmers have access to? Then we also try to also understand that mechanization is very important, because if you're talking about empowering these farmers, bringing them into clusters, then moving them from manpower. Most often, the reason why these farmers can't repay back their loan is, again, it is manpower driven. So we are funding a sector that is going to be manpower driven, that is limited and has its own challenges in terms of access to manpower, even though they are cheaper labor in rural environment. And now, because of urban migration, this manpower is gradually getting limited. So it's going to take us a whole lot of bottlenecks in terms of addressing these issues what we're trying to do individually. So when we bring them into clusters, it's easier for funding for these clusters. First, we have addressed the form of funding. Then we now talk about digitalization. So because there are also clusters, we can now talk about easy buy phones. There are a lot of initiatives in Nigeria that people in the urban centers are enjoying. Easy buy, where you can pay a little and gradually you get a smartphone. So these services too can extend to rural areas for them to be able to have access to a smartphone. Then also agent banking to solve the issue of onboarding them to have to become financial included. Then again, investing in infrastructure, because we need to invest in our infrastructure in terms of road, in terms of internet, especially internet. I should be able to make phone calls from anywhere. So it's also even reduced when we invest in infrastructure. It's also even reduced in terms of insecurity, because sometimes when you're in some farms and there are no internet, no network for you to even make decent call. So it even puts you at risk. So investment in some of this sector are very, very important for us to drive agriculture to become more profitable.
Great. Thank you so much for shedding that light that I actually wanted you to do, because there were people that don't know how to go about this despite the advantages that others take about these loans. So you mentioned cluster the farmers, register them, and co-op management system, which is something that is amazing and will work for them. But it takes me to, we're talking now, we have mentioned commercial banks and microfinance banks. So now let's talk about what the role of government policies and programs play in supporting agro-financing after having gotten these loans.
We don't have policy problem in Nigeria. What we have is politics problem. Our problems are within our politics. The ability to execute what we've set to want to do. Our policies are very perfect. Our policies are good. What to start looking at, for me, is how we can start removing bottlenecks. What we have too much bottlenecks in our policy executions. So we need to start taking up these policies. And again, see how much of these policies we can automate. Most of these processes, how many of them can we automate in terms of funding? In Nigeria, I would like to say that our funding systems, our funding in Nigeria are two types: the financial from the financial institutions and also from the government interventions. Most of our government interventions are very, very affordable. The challenge is not accessible. So when we can take off the bottlenecks in terms of automating the process, without me getting to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows the person that is in charge of most of these interventions, it's going to become quite more inclusive, so that it's not going to look like it is one-sided. Then again, in terms of promotion, in terms of educating the masses about the interventions we have as Nigerians, often it is after the end of a particular intervention that many Nigerians get to know about it, because we don't talk more about it. We are very, very quite negative as Nigerians. We are too quick to talk about the things that are not properly done in our country than things that are done correctly, than even intervention that is going on. Let me just take a very quick example. When you look at the incident that happened at Dangote refinery yesterday, it was very quick for Nigerians to start tweeting about it. But the little effort the refinery has contributed to our oil sector, people are not talking about it very well. So most of our interventions are not well, we don't talk about them very well. So these interventions, all that government needs to do is to take out bottlenecks by automating the processes. We need to automate the process. Let's bring the use of technology. I should be able to apply for this loan without knowing somebody that knows somebody, and these loans get approved. If all the processes, all the processes, all the criteria are being met. So we need to start talking more about automation of our processes. Again, we don't have policy problem. I would just say we have politics problem.
Right. All right. Thank you for that. I like when you said it's not a policy problem, but a politics problem. So having said what you have just, shed light on, how does it affect between small-scale businesses and large-scale farmers, right? Because it seems like the large-scale farmers are the ones profiting and benefiting from these loans. So how does this impact both of them, small-scale and large-scale farmers, differently?
Yeah, business, first of all, is about profit making. Without it's about profit making. So as a commercial bank, they are interested in making profit than more about impact.
We're trying to shed light about how small-scale businesses, farmers, and large-scale farmers are benefiting, and what's the difference between them, because it seems like the large-scale farmers are getting more via loans. So it segues into the next question I want to talk to you about not just what government is doing, and what are the policies? Are there policies that the government has put in place that would make business easy for these farmers? And what are those policies? And are there any programs at play to support agro-financing for these farmers?
Yes. So we have the Agro-Pro program, an initiative from the Central Bank to intervene in terms of provide funds, single digit funds for these farmers.
We still have Emmanuel Abushson on, and we seem to be having some, not technical difficulties, but internet connection. And he'll be right back on to us as we still talk about agro-financing, challenges, and solutions. Emmanuel, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hey, please. Thank you.
All right. So, like I mentioned earlier, so we need to start seeing these small farms bring themselves together and organize themselves to be able to access funds. So when you look at the large scale farmers, they have the front, they have the collateral already, they have the securities already, they have the collateral, they have the numbers, they have the book, they can show you their financial records that with this, if you do this, they have the traction. Not that the smaller farmers don't have the traction. Again, there's no data that can justify their claims compared to the large scale farmers. And business is about profit. And we want to invest in areas that bring you profit. So for the smallholder farmers, we have interventions again that they are often not informed. We also need to look at information, the information gap between the small scale farmers and the large scale farmers. The large scale farmers are always out to want to seek for information that will better their business. The small scale farmers are already used. They are comfortable with their experience, with how they do it. So when it comes to even the services, getting the services of extension service worker, because when you talk about funding for small scale farmers, we also need to talk about input as against output. Then again, the efficiency of the farming process. Let's say, for example, what we have as 1 hectare, sometimes it in terms of tons, in terms of output, varies from 1 to 2 tons. While ideally, when it's being done effectively, we should talk about 7 to 8 tons per hectare. So the efficiency is not there. And you don't want to invest where you are not going to get your return and get your return without hitches, without risks. So it's easier to invest in large scale farmers because they have employed every form of professionalism to make their business more profiting and to position them financially to be able to acquire more revenue. So more revenue. So what we need to start looking at again is to organize these small scale farmers to become bigger farms, to be able to assess and then disseminate information to these people in the best form in terms of radio. Most of them listen to radio, not necessarily newspapers, not necessarily television, because many of them don't have access to television due to also shortage of power infrastructure around these localities. So then the use of town hall meetings, maybe even the use of traditional councils, traditional leaders to be able to reach to the grassroots so that they can be able to become more effective. So the first I will canvas for is that we should be able to organize these smaller farmers to move them from informal setting to become to the formal setting. Most of these large scale farmers are registered with CAC. They have their tax, they have their tax records, they have their bookkeeping records, and all of this professionalism bring into business to be able to access funding. So we need to organize these small scale farmers to be able to start enjoying some of these interventions, some of these policies that are targeted to better their businesses. Again, interpretation of these policies. Most of them don't even know what the policy is about. Even some of us in urban centers that work closely and try to see how we can even have our foot with the government, bridging the gap between the government and the people. The information sometimes we get to know about some policies maybe 2 days or a day to public hearing, or until the policies are out. Then we're not trying to depict the policies, that these policies need to the policies, the budgeting and all of that have some gap. So information is a big problem, and the government needs to do its best to educate the people when they're bringing policies, so that we don't have. We're already suffering trust issues. The people don't trust the government. The government is afraid of the people. So we need to educate the people and bring them to the point to understand that the policies that are created, the reforms that have been created, especially the renewable reforms, are for the people, not just them seeing the pay, but also understanding that this is a process that is leading us somewhere. Because we are talking about we are talking about food sufficiency, food security. There are processes, there are processes that lead us to this place, and these processes, the people must be carried along so that they don't just feel the pain, but also know that they are also part of the process. Then we don't just sit down and create policies for these people. We need to bring them in as also stakeholders for us to be able to first do the need analysis, because we're trying to, it's just like doctor trying to prescribe drugs to a patient that he has not seen just because he had that the patient has headache, without understanding, okay, maybe there are other symptoms that this patients might be suffering. So our stakeholders, our politicians, are also the National Assembly, the State Assembly, the Council must interact with these farmers, these stakeholders, and bring them on board. Then again, that commodity associations, we have commodity associations in Nigeria. The commodity association also must be fully involved in educating the farmers and also advocating for policies that will better the life of their members.
I appreciate you, Emmanuel. Thank you for shedding that light. We appreciate that, and I'm talking about myself and the farmer that is listening and soaking up everything you're talking about. But quickly, like they say, business is unfair, it's a war zone. So when we talk about considering the small-scale farmers and them not being readily able to access those loans, and you shed light to that, and I'm sure they're excited about that. But again, we talked about government and the role they're playing. So I want to ask a direct question. Are there specific government initiatives or subsidies that have been put in place that is working, and how far has it worked?
Okay, first of all, the Anchors Brass program though it had its own gap, but it was able to drive some results in terms of rice production. Before now, you can count the number of rice processing factory in Kano, for example. But now we have over 200 rice processing factories in Kano, because you are talking about the input first, which is the raw materials, rice, the paddy rice, and the production scaled up to an extent for us to not start even talking about cottage industries, then better factories that can process rice. So the Angola program had its own effect, a positive effect in our country, but we are more about the negative part. Like I said, the number of rice processing factory in Kano was not up to 50 before the event of the Agribusiness Brass program. After the Agribusiness Brass program, we have over 300 factories, rice factory in Kano. That is one. Then again, we have the input subsidy in terms of fertilizer subsidy. Most of the challenges smallholder farmers have is information that these interventions are available. The Ministry of Agriculture currently purchased some tractors to be able to bridge the gap of mechanization in Nigeria. These are interventions. Also, the renewed administration has also provided quality input, because until the quality of our input increases, we cannot talk about the output. So the subsidy in terms of input, in terms of fertilizer, seedlings from the Ministry of Agriculture to subsidize, these are subsidized inputs for farmers, but these farmers are not aware, and they're not aware because of these bottlenecks I just mentioned in terms of how information gets to them. Then the bottlenecks around the ministry, it's because it's not automated, so it's hard to be the person that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody for you to be able to get the things that are meant to be for Nigerians. So most of the interventions happening currently have bottlenecks, and the reason why it's not getting to the farmers. So there is an ongoing input subsidy from the Ministry of Agriculture to farmers currently. Then also mechanization. So the ministry is acquiring tractors that will enable farmers, smaller farmers, like I said, when they are organized, have access to this facility. Then again, there are also loans from the Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, targeting smallholder farmers. but they must be organized. Now, some of these loans don't come in terms of cash, it comes in terms of input. And most farmers want cash. And when cash is given to them, a very good number of them don't use it to farm. So this is another problem. Then a big challenge that the Ministry of Agriculture or our government need to address is the timing of this input. You cannot be bringing input when we're already talking about harvest. Timing is also another is another thing to consider. Then this input don't get to the farmers because it has passed the period, or when it gets to the farmers cannot use it again because the period that the time for planting has passed. So it's with the farmer, it's a waste. Then the Ministry of Agriculture has in their own book they have empowered farmers, but the farmers are not rightly empowered because of timing.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I have a ton of questions for you, but for want of time, we would call it a wrap on the show. Thank you so much, and we will have you sometime, hopefully again soon.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
So in conclusion, agro-financing is a vital component of a thriving agricultural sector, providing the necessary resources for growth and innovation by addressing the challenges like we have tried to do for the past hour and leveraging new opportunities like we shed some light on. We can create a more sustainable and a more productive future for farmers and agribusinesses alike. Thank you so much for staying tuned to the show. Lastly, before we go, we'd like to shed some light, let you know about currency market updates right now. Dollar for 1,444.30 on official markets, and in the parallel selling market is 1,505. Pounds going for 1,853.90. Official selling rates as on the parallel market is 1,890, and euros going for 1,573.42 official selling rates, and in the parallel market is 1,580. That's it for Market Insights updates on currency. We sign out. See you next time tomorrow, same time. Have a lovely day.